So let's look at the Passion of Christ. The Passion of Christ. Often the kind of prototypical situation you'll see Jesus represented in is on the cross. Yeah, dying, suffering on the cross. This can be kind of seem like a depressing, unpleasant image. I know it puts a lot of people off Christianity, actually. So first of all, we have to understand what crucifixion is. I had a teacher that explained this to me in great detail. So crucifixion is usually you'll be put a nail through the tibia and fibula, through the forearms, and not usually through the hands, but often just tied. So this isn't the essential part. It's just a way of getting someone up. It doesn't have to be on a cross. It can be usually more likely on a T, but there's spiritual significance to the cross. Essentially what it does is it suffocates you. So what you need to do, if you've ever done a wide hand pull-up, you'll know this is quite difficult. You have to sort of pull yourself up, then eventually those muscles get tired and you go down, and it's to do with the back of the ribs and the scapula. This actually suffocates you. And eventually you sort of drown. It's a very efficient way the Romans created for kind of minimum effort for creating maximum suffering over an extended period of time. Eventually the muscles give out. This can take days. Jesus actually died relatively quickly, they say, which leads to conspiracy theories about how he faked it. Really extended suffering, really, the Romans were masters of torture, and this was a deeply unpleasant way to die, reserved for only the very lower class people, because slaves and the like, because it was considered so unpleasant. So Jesus is represented in this form. Interestingly, the name passion. So for me, what it's symbolic of is the suffering of being human. So in Buddhism, we call this dukkha, different types of dukkha. So there's the suffering of suffering, right? Okay, like, hanging on a fucking cross, having people poke you with sticks and put thorns on your head, absolutely. But for me, the passion can also be this suffering of attachment to desire. So this is a very Buddhist perspective on it. I've seen it contrasted, the Passion of Christ, with the Buddha. So these are the sort of two poles, if you will, of what we're interested in spirituality. Like, one is like the suffering of being human, like how much it hurts to be human, and even when we get what we like, when we're passionate about something, when we then get attached to it, the pain of that. Passion for me also is about the sort of heart, the caring, Now, I never quite got the Jesus died for your sins thing, but as a representation of like caring so much that it's pain and you're willing to go through pain. Now, that is one aspect of being a human being. And then the Buddha, on the other side, this other aspect of perfect equanimity, of calm, of rising above passions, of rising above attachment and desire. Desire is actually a bad translation of the word. Grasping would be a better translation of what the Buddha used. Is this sort of opposite pole. And so I think in a lot of Western spirituality now, people are really going towards this, being transcendent, being calm, and everyone uses the yoga voice and pretends nothing makes them angry. What a load of bullshit. I think in many ways we need the other side, which pagans are good at that too, but is represented in that Christian image of suffering. Now, of course, that can go into kind of guilt and awfulness and blah blah blah. But when those two things are balanced, I think that's a lovely image, yeah. And to transcend suffering, right? So if you see the sort of hardcore Christian practices of like people whipping themselves or wearing tight clothes or vests made of uncomfortable straw, that's another attachment practice. And actually, Buddhists had very simple robes. We do uncomfortable. If you meditate for a couple of hours, it's uncomfortable. Yeah. So there's also a practice of, that could look like I'm punishing myself. I'm a bad person. This is the trap in this. It can also be a practice of transcendence, of rising above it. So yeah, there's my thoughts on the Passion of Christ from a very beautiful monastery in Mallorca.